Greetings everyone, I'm Stefan and today we'll be covering all of the origins in Stellaris 3.0. For today's video, I have created an origins tier list. As you can see on screen, the origins that are the most powerful are ranked at the top, and the origins which are least powerful are ranked at the bottom. Each origin also has an indication of any restrictions, although there is one exception to the rule, and that is Shattered Ring and Doomsday origins. Those two have actually been split up depending on empire type, because a Shattered Ring with a normal empire plays very differently than a Shattered Ring with a machine empire. Otherwise, if you have seen my previous 2.6 origins video, you will see that a lot of these rankings are different because some of the ways you play these origins have changed and the relative power has changed as well. I would highly encourage you to watch this video to see any changes and to check out what has happened to some of the origins. So let's begin. We'll be starting at the very bottom with F tier, and we'll actually just fly through all these origins because these are ones you probably will never want to pick. Common Ground is a prime example of a bad origin. You start in a federation with 2 other members, however, this is a galactic union, so you don't have any particular sway over your fellow federation members. You are also severely limited in expansion. Your fellow federation members will probably grab up most of the territory in your nearby area, unless of course you block them off and take the territory for yourself, in which case there will be 2 other empires dragging you down throughout the whole game. Post-apocalyptic is another terrible origin. You start off on a tomb world instead of a normal planet. In exchange, you get tomb world habitability plus 70% and extra liter lifespan. However, neither of these modifiers is particularly useful, because you will probably never find more tomb worlds in your near area to colonize, and getting an extra liter lifespan of 10 years really doesn't make that much of a difference. In exchange, you have to deal with the downsides of living on a tomb world. First and foremost, you will actually have less planet capacity from open districts than a normal planet, which means less pop growth on your planet. You will also not be able to have other species comfortably on your planet, because they will suffer extreme habitability penalties. Moving on, we have a galactic doorstep. With this origin, you start off with a gateway in your home system, and you go through a mini event chain to try to activate it. This event chain does give you some resources, such as for example 1k minerals and 3 or 4 minor artifacts, but overall the gains are minimal, and if you go all the way with the project, you will lose a scientist, a science ship, and you will actually get a fleet to invade your home system, which you can't easily defend from, unless you actually militarize your home station and try to prepare for the incoming fleet. This is basically what the gateway origin does. Actually restoring the gateway is extremely expensive since you don't get any sort of discount on restoring it, and it will also activate a random gateway in another part of the galaxy, probably 20 or so years in, at a point where most of the galaxy will already be taken. So overall, while the effect could be strong, it is completely wasted because it's not feasible to get it early on, and you'd be sacrificing your empire to try to go for it. Next up, we have Doomsday. It's no surprise that it's an F tier because it is supposed to be a challenging origin. Your planet will blow up about 40 years from the start of the game, and you have to somehow evacuate your population or have it all be lost. However, Doomsday can be somewhat powerful as long as you're trying to rush someone down. Doomsday will give you some serious bonuses to alloys, minerals, and energy income, but because your planet is going to be deteriorating habitability and stability wise, you will not be able to produce a whole lot of stuff. If you're playing as a normal empire, the habitability penalty is going to hit you very hard, and it's going to be very difficult to manage your amenities while trying to also build up something on your planet. Because of the changes in 3.0, Doomsday has actually become worse. You cannot simply spam alloy foundries on your home planet and try to build up a massive fleet to try to take some empire out early on. Instead, you have to build up industrial districts, and industrial districts only give 1 metallurgist job each. This can be somewhat mitigated, but as a normal empire, it's better off to just not play this origin if you're trying to rush someone down and play something else instead. And if you really want to rush someone down with Doomsday, you should be playing a hive mind or a machine empire. A hive mind playing Doomsday would be higher up on the tier list. In fact, I've ranked it in C tier. That is because spamming alloys as a hive mind empire is a whole lot easier than doing so with a normal empire. You get 2 alloy jobs out of each industrial district, and so building up a decent alloy production to take out another empire is significantly easier. It becomes even easier with a machine empire. As a machine empire, you will not be suffering any habitability penalties because your robots have perfect habitability everywhere, and you'll be able to really utilize the bonuses from Doomsday to build up a lot of generator districts and industrial districts. If you combine Doomsday with something like a Determined Exterminator, you will have a very fun time, and you will probably be able to take out any empire that is in your nearby space. However, even with Machine Empire, I would still rank this as a B tier origin. That is because rushing someone down early on is not particularly reliable, and as Machine Empire, you will not get nearly as much benefit from trying to go and get someone else's pops. The most you can do with them is make them into batteries, and batteries aren't particularly efficient compared to any other sort of pop job. Granted, with Driven Assimilator, this could probably be an A tier origin, but even then, there's the risk of you not finding someone early on, or not being able to rush someone down early on, depending on your difficulty setting. Either way, rushing someone down is the strategy to go for with Doomsday, and just trying to peacefully go and settle on nearby planets is not going to work. You don't even get guaranteed habitable worlds, and so you can potentially get really unlucky and just have a single planet in your nearby space, or no planets whatsoever. As far as consistency goes, this is probably the least consistent origin of them all. Moving into C tier, we have Mechanist. You start with some of your population being replaced with robots, and you get minus 5% to robot upkeep. This is a pretty decent origin when it comes to growth, but other empires will be able to catch up pretty quickly because researching robot technology isn't particularly difficult and can be easily done within the first 15 to 20 years. In 3.0, this origin did get a bit of a buff, albeit indirectly. In 3.0, robots can work any sort of worker jobs, and droids can work any sort of specialist jobs. This makes it a lot easier to have robots working on all your planets because you will not have to worry about building up the necessary districts to actually make them useful. Moving on, we have Shattered Ring, and it is quite sad to see it down here in C tier. Yeah, it's come quite a long way from what it once was, and there's a lot of downsides to actually playing this origin now. The first and most noticeable thing is that expansion is very difficult with the Ring World. You start off with a Ring World preference, which gives you no extra habitability on any other planets, start with no guaranteed habitables to colonize, and overall, until you get droids or other species, trying to colonize and expand your empire is going to be quite difficult. Your one upside, which is starting on a Ring World, is also not nearly as good as it used to be. All the districts on the Ring World have been cut in half when it comes to what they actually produce. For example, the research segment now produces 10 jobs instead of 20, while requiring the same amount of upkeep. You do have a feature on your home world which produces whatever upkeep your first district of each type needs. So for example, if we build one research segment, the Ring World itself will upkeep it, but if we build any more, you will have to pay for it. While you still can go for pretty serious tech rushes with Ring World, you will be leaving yourself exposed to basically anything else. When it comes to making minerals, and by extension alloys, you're going to have a very difficult time because you have no reasonable way of getting extra minerals production, and because you don't have direct access to energy jobs, you don't really have the option to just constantly buy minerals off the market. Instead, you have to farm food, sell the food on the market, and then buy minerals using that money. If you are playing a Ring World with a hive mind or machine intelligence though, you will have access to generator segments which produce a lot of energy, and using that energy, you can buy whatever resources you need. If you are playing as a hive mind though, you will have a different sort of issue, and that is that your researcher jobs require lots and lots of minerals. Minerals that you can't really provide. If you build a single research segment, for example, your economy is going to tank, and if you try to start buying minerals to keep up the upkeep, the prices will go up significantly, and you'll be suffering tremendously. It is also much more difficult to colonize other planets in your nearby space as a hive mind, because you can't have robots, and you cannot have other species in your empire until very late game. The only empire type you will have a good time playing Ring World on is with a Machine Empire. With Machine Empire, you will have access to generator segments, and your researchers actually consume energy to make any research. It is very easy to spam a bunch of research as Machine Empire, and when it comes to colonizing nearby planets, it is very easy to do so as well. Machine Empires have perfect habitability everywhere, and so finding and colonizing planets to extract minerals from them is going to be fairly easy. You also have the advantage of having each of your industrial segments give 10 fabricator jobs, and so getting a good income of alloys as Machine Empire is relatively easy. On the tier list, I've ranked a Machine Intelligence Shattered Ring as A tier, although if you have a lot of planets in your nearby space, aka just get lucky, this can easily be an S tier origin. One thing to note is that if you're playing as a Rogue Servitor or a Driven Assimilator, there is currently a bug, as of Stellaris 3.0.3, where your organic species don't actually get a Ring World preference, and so you can settle them on other planets really easily and grow your empire quite quickly. But anyways, let's move back down to C tier, where we have the life-seeded origin. Life-seeded will start you on a size 25 Gaia planet with special resource deposits, which give you mote harvesting, gas extraction, and crystal mines. Because your home planet has these features, getting motes, gas, and crystals is pretty easy, and because of 3.0 it's pretty easy to unlock building slots, you'll be getting the full benefit from those 3 special resources. The modifiers of a Gaia world are quite significant. You get extra resources from jobs, and extra happiness for your biological pops. The one downside to starting on a Gaia world is that all your species are Gaia world preference. This means that just like with Ringworld, colonization of other planets becomes quite difficult unless you make a migration pact and try to get other species or try to have robots colonize your nearby worlds. If this origin did not have a Gaia world preference, I would certainly rank this much higher on the tier list. As of now though, there's plenty of origins that simply overshadow it. For instance, Lost Colony. Lost Colony's primary gimmick is that you start off with another empire of your same species, starting as an advanced empire somewhere in the galaxy. However, Lost Colony also has a hidden bonus, which is its planetary modifier, Colonial Spirit. The bonuses that you get from this are quite generous and are quite a bit better than the bonuses you get from Life-Seeded. Unlike Prosperous Certification, these bonuses are also permanent, and so you'll be able to enjoy extra resources on your home planet throughout the entire game. One thing about Lost Colony is that I would highly recommend getting Adaptive on your species. As Lost Colony, you start with 90% habitability on your home planet, and so starting with Adaptive is going to give you 100% and also make it easier for you to colonize your nearby planets. Next up on the tier list, we have Syncretic Evolution. This is quite a powerful origin because you start off with the ability to customize 2 species at the beginning of the game, and so you can specialize them for 2 different things. In our case, we'll have a smart and charismatic main species and a dumbed down secondary species, which is going to produce us a lot of resources because being serviles gives them extra happiness and resources. If you are playing Syncretic Evolution, I would also highly recommend going for rapid breeders on your primary species and slow breeders on your secondary species. You will definitely want to have more of your primary species in your empire because your secondary species cannot work any ruler or specialist jobs. With Syncretic Evolution, I would highly recommend enslaving your secondary species right off the bat for extra resources from jobs. With all these things in place, your syncretic species will have a lot of production right off the bat, and unlike other origins which boost your capital planet, you'll be able to have this combination of normal pop and slave pop on all of your worlds, boosting research there. Using this combination of 2 specialized species, we are producing a bunch of resources across the board, and our slaves in particular are producing a whole lot from their jobs. This combination of primary species and secondary species can easily be carried over on your other planets. This means that you can get all the bonuses on those planets as well, unlike some of the other origins which just give you a bonus on your capital. Next up, we have Calamitous Birth. Honestly, this is probably the weakest B tier origin on the tier list, but it does have its perks. First and foremost, this origin has a very decent capital modifier. You get 6 extra districts, 6 extra mining districts, which makes farming up minerals very easy as a lithoid empire, and you also get a plus 25% to pop growth speed. This counteracts the minus 25% growth speed you'll be getting with normal lithoids, and right off the bat you'll be experiencing a lot of growth on your home planet. The other benefit of the origin is the ability to construct lithoid meteorite colony ships, which are significantly cheaper and faster to build than normal colony ships. Once you colonize a planet with this lithoid meteorite, the planet will get a minus 50% habitability penalty, but in exchange you get 2 buried lithoid blockers on the planet. You can actually queue up clearing these blockers before the colony even develops, and once the colony is completely done developing, you'll be able to get a jump start on your colony with the extra population. In the past though, this origin used to be significantly stronger. You used to be able to cheaply resettle a population back to your home planet and just recolonize your worlds. However, in 3.0, abandoning colonies and simply recolonizing them has become a lot more expensive. And so while this trick is possible in the very late game where you have a lot of influence to spare, it's not really reasonable to do early on. Next up, we have Remnants. Remnants will start you off on a relic world which you can potentially restore into Ecumenopolis later down the line. This relic world will also have special features on it called Ruin Arcologies. These are actually blockers that you have to clear, and they are quite expensive, so I would recommend getting some sort of reduction before actually clearing them. Once you do clear them, you get an average of 3 matter artifacts per clear, as well as a technology that you don't already have. Once we clear an arcology, we'll get an almost research technology as an option in our tech tree, and so if you're clearing arcologies early, you'll be able to get a nice tech head start over any other empire. The minor artifacts can also be sold for a very healthy amount of energy credits, and so clearing these blockers will give you anywhere between 500 and 2,500 energy credits per clear. This is a very nice boost to your early economy, and will allow you to do a bit more than any other empire, because you do have a pretty steady income of extra energy credits from these ruin arcologies. Eventually though, you will run out of ruin arcologies on your capital planet, and the only other way to get them is on your 2 guaranteed habitables. When you colonize them, as you can see, you get extra ruin arcologies, and you also get a nice minus 25% discount to building cost and district cost. One last thing to know about remnants is that starting at a relic world is very nice if you try to go for conquest or nihilistic acquisition. Relic worlds function pretty much as Gaias in that they have high habitability for any species in the galaxy. Next up, we have Prosperous Unification. With this origin, you start off with 4 extra pops on your home planet, 2 extra districts, and a very hefty modifier to your happiness, amenities, and resources. This modifier actually does expire after a while. In Stellaris 3.0.2, it expires after 10 years, but in Stellaris 3.0.3 and beyond, it expires in 20 years. So if you're watching the video right after it's been released, you will have to tune in to the 3.0.3 beta to get the 20-year modifier. Stellaris as a game is all about snowball. The more powerful you can get early on, the more it pays off later on, and so a temporary bonus like this really does help you out in the long run. But now, let's move on to some of the best origins in the game in A tier, starting with Hegemon. Just like Common Ground, this spawns you with 2 other empires in your nearby space, which are in a federation with you. However, unlike Common Ground, you have a lot more say over these empires. You start off as the president of a hegemony, and you have full authority over other empires when it comes to kicking them from the Federation. One of the best strategies to use with Hegemon is to kick one of the members from Federation early on, and then consume them with the help of your other Federation member. At that point, you can either consume your other Federation member, or just kind of keep them around and help build up a hegemony. Hegemonies as a Federation type give some pretty nice bonuses, and once you're able to conquer another empire, you'll be able to stay in power in the hegemony pretty easily. Next up, we have On the Shoulders of Giants. This origin will give you an archaeological site in your home system that you have to explore. This is not the only archaeological site that you'll discover. You'll actually have to go through like 4 of them, and each of them will start giving you resources all throughout. In particular, excavating all these dig sites will give you a lot of minor artifacts, and so for the first 20 or so years of the game, you could be in a massive energy credit deficit, but still be making a lot of money by just selling minor artifacts. The event chain will also result in some pretty nifty bonuses. Once you complete the first part in the early game, you'll get an empire-wide modifier, and in the mid-game, you'll actually continue the event chain with another more powerful modifier to your empire. You will also be getting a habitable planet as a result of the event chain, as well as a planet with primitives on there. The story itself behind On the Shoulders of Giants is relatively interesting, and a good read if you're chilling in a single-player game. Next up on the tier list, we have Void Dwellers. This origin has gone down in power, primarily because of the new planetary capacity system. Overall, this origin depends on habitats to try to stay afloat. You cannot colonize normal planets because you have habitat preference, and if you do colonize them, you'll have extreme growth and production penalties. What you have to do is build up new habitats for your pops to live in, and the whole game is going to be a balancing act of making sure you have enough space for your population, while also making sure you have enough production to try to out-tech other empires. You have to make sure to balance your alloy production and your research output, because those are going to be your 2 strengths. Alloy output is going to be used in trying to defend yourself and to also build up new habitats, and research is going to set you ahead of the curve. Another benefit of Void Dwellers is that you can make do with very little space. For example, if we just took this little cluster of space, we'd be able to build up an empire that can rival those that take an entire big section of the galaxy. The only difficulty will be making sure you actually manage your economy well enough to get to that point. I've done a whole live stream on how to play Void Dwellers and how to do it optimally, but here are a few quick tips. When you're building up your habitats, you want to go for a 1-to-1 ratio of habitation districts to whatever resource district you have. It will pretty much always seem like you have way too much housing, but really all you care about is planetary capacity. Habitats have extremely low planet capacity, and you can easily start experiencing massive penalties to pop growth if you don't manage housing well. Because of the planet capacity issue, you also want to not have too much population on your habitats. The most I'd reasonably go for is 23 pops. Anything beyond that is too much, and you should be resettling extra population on other habitats that you build. When it comes to resettlement, you have two options. Either you manually resettle all of your population and spend half of your time on the resettlement menu, or you go for automatic migration and try to boost it with something like democracy. This is what I generally would recommend, because managing 20 different habitats and resettling from one habitat to another can be quite annoying. For the same reason, robots and habitats are very annoying as well. You cannot automatically resettle robots, and so I would generally recommend going for a bio-ascension with Void Dwellers instead of a synth ascension, and just going ahead and building clone vats and not even bothering with the robots. One last thing is that you want to make sure you're expanding quickly enough to make sure your empire does well. I would highly recommend aiming for a dozen habitats by 3 dozen years in, or in other words, 12 habitats 36 years in. That is at normal tech speeds under peace conditions. If you are involved in a war, as Void Dwellers, you can do fairly well. You can easily get a decent chunk of energy credit and alloy output, and so conquering or fighting another empire shouldn't be that big of a deal, even early on. However, every alloy that you spend on ships is an alloy you're not spending on building habitats, and so you have to be extremely careful when it comes to warfare and militarizing. Generally, I would use the fact that you don't have to expand very much to secure some choke points and be very defensive in the early game. Either that, or using your extra pop output to try to make as much alloys as possible early and just go for conquest early on. Either way you play it, you have to play it very carefully, and if you do, you will be rewarded. Our next origin is the opposite. It's Tree of Life, and it gives you some pretty serious bonuses without you really having to do anything. Specifically with Tree of Life, you get special features on your planets, and they give you extra pop growth speed and extra housing. Your capital gets 50% pop growth and 10 housing, but your colonies get 10% pop growth and 5 housing. Either way, the extra pop growth and the extra housing combine for a lot of growth across your empire. With the newly introduced S-curve, overall you'll be getting, I'd say, 20 to 25% extra pop growth across all your planets, simply because you're doing it with Tree of Life. Another thing to know about Tree of Life is that your colony ship cost changes. You have to pay 1,000 food and 50 alloys per colony ship, which actually isn't that bad, considering how food is a lot easier to produce than alloys, and so this is more of a benefit than anything else. Planets that you have not colonized directly and obtained through other means, such as for example conquering them, will get a pretty hefty modifier if you don't have a Tree of Life on them. This can easily be fixed with a decision, which will add the Tree of Life to your planet, and all the modifiers that go along with it. As you can see, the Tree of Life sapling that gets planted across all your planets is pretty nice. Next up, we have a very powerful origin for machine empires, and that is resource consolidation. This origin will start you off on a machine world rather than any normal planet, and the benefits of a machine world are quite tremendous. You get extra resources from jobs, decreased pop housing usage, which doesn't really matter too much but is nice. You get all the building slots unlocked, just like on a ring world or a Ecomenopolis, and you get an extra replicator job, so you get even more growth on your home planet. The extra replicator job is something added in Stellaris 3.0.3 and is something you have to unlock manually. Otherwise, on a machine world, you get the very nice benefit of being able to build whatever districts you want in whatever number you want. Of course, limited by your district cap. This makes building up an economy quite easy, and with all the building slots you have, your capital is going to be a booming powerhouse. The only downside to this origin is that you don't start with any sort of deposits in your home system, which honestly isn't that bad because you get the extra resources from your home world. Overall, this is an extremely strong origin, and you can do whatever you want with it. You can build up a lot of mineral production and build up a solid alloy output, or you can go ahead and spam research labs across your planet and get a lot of tech output really early on. But anyways, let's now move on to the S tier origins with Necrophage. Necrophage is a relatively recent origin and has been introduced in the Necroids Species Pack. This origin works somewhat like Syncretic Evolution in the way that you have 2 species on your planets. You have your primary species, which are necrophages and have some pretty serious bonuses when it comes to later lifespan, resource output, and upkeep, but cannot really grow or do worker jobs very well. Instead, you'll have a pre-patent species which are going to be your workers and are going to be the population that you make new necrophages from. New necrophages are generated via the Chamber of Elevation. It is a special building that you can build across all your planets that provides necrophyte jobs. The pops that work in necrophyte jobs have to be of a secondary species, such as your pre-patent species or some other, and once every 10 years, they will ascend and become your primary species. However, this is not the only way to get necrophage pops. What you can also do is set a species rights to undesirables and do necrophage purge. To be able to do the necrophage purge, you will have to be a xenophobe. So if you play as a xenophobic empire, you're able to go ahead and just, get new pops via necrophage purge, which is significantly faster than elevating them once every 10 years. The only issue with this process is that it's not efficient. You're not guaranteed to get necrophage pops every time you purge a normal pop, and so elevating them is going to be quite a bit more efficient than doing the necro purge. However, the necro purge is very nice, and when you conquer new planets and conquer new empires, you'll be able to convert them into your primary species pretty easily. But wait, there's more. As a necrophage, you're guaranteed 2 guaranteed primitive worlds in your nearby space, which can have up to 24 population per planet. In this case, we have 2 guaranteed primitive worlds with 10 population and 8 population each. So that's 18 pops at the very beginning of the game, and it is a lot easier to conquer a planet than it is to colonize it. So you will not only have more pops in your empire, you will also have faster colonization. The only issue with these guaranteed primitive worlds, though, is that once you do go ahead and conquer them, they will get a pretty serious culture shock modifier, which reduces their resource from jobs and their stability. You will also not be able to resettle the population of this new planet back to your home world, and instead you'll probably have to resettle some of your own pops to this new colony to try to manage its stability. This culture shock modifier will go away after 10 years, however, and so as long as you do this early on, you will not be affected too much overall. These new pops can be used in a variety of ways. For example, if you could go ahead and necrophage purge them, you make them into your primary species. You can keep them as slaves and, have them as a secondary species, or you can give them full citizenship as long as you're not a xenophobe, and just have them be extra population in your empire. In either case, pops are pops, and being able to get up to 48 population right off the bat is extremely powerful. If you get unlucky though, and you get 2 tiny primitive worlds with 4 population on them each, this origin might not be that good, but it would still be quite powerful when it comes to your population and specialization. However, no matter how you do it, I would highly recommend keeping your secondary species that you start with around on your planets. This secondary species can be used for the same purposes as a syncretic secondary species. You use them for your worker jobs and get more resource output overall. And last but not least, we have Scion in the Origins tier list. Scion is not as economically powerful as Necrophage, but it is powerful in its very own way. Starting off as a vassal of a fallen empire gives you pretty much perfect protection. A random fallen empire in the galaxy will serve as your sugar daddy, and you'll occasionally be getting gifts from them, including a gift that gives you a whole bunch of fleet power. Something like 5.5k fleet power, and if you get that event early on, you'll be able to just, go all out and wreck any other empires in your nearby space. However, even if you don't, you can rest assured that your development will be completely safe. As a vassal of Fallen Empire, no one will attack you. Actually, if you declare a war on someone and start losing, the Fallen Empire will come to your aid and send fleets your way. In 3.0, you even get a wormhole directly to your Fallen Empire sugar daddy, so that they can directly go in and help you there, even if they are on the other side of the galaxy. If you want to have a nice chill playthrough, Scion is the way to go. Although personally, I've never played it because, it simply makes the game too easy. But anyways, this has been the Origins tier list. If you have enjoyed this video, please do leave a like, and if you have any questions, do leave them in the comments. In the near future, I'll be updating even more tier lists, although I doubt I'll be making exclusive videos on each of them. Stuff like civics and traits haven't really changed too much, so I'll probably update all the tier lists and publish the updates in a single video, but even before that, I'll be publishing the updates to the tier lists in my Discord. So if you haven't joined that yet, please do go ahead, link is in the description. But anyways, thank you all for watching, special thank you to my Patreon supporters, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.